Hey guys, welcome to Star Wars Timeline. We're here to talk about episode 5 of the Kenobi show. As always, this will be a full spoiler on review. If you don't want to find out what happens, all the plot twists, you have been warned. Please turn away now. And as usual, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your kind comments and interactions in the videos, and we get to share our thoughts and ideas. Anyway, for those of you who have been watching my reviews of the Kenobi show, you guys pretty much understand where I sit with it, right? It hasn't been quite stellar, but it's also not really that bad. It's somewhere in between for me. Let's take a closer look at this episode. I have particular thoughts to share about specific story plots and sequences here. So we begin with Kenobi versus Anakin, obligatory duel, right? This is way back to the prequels, and we see de-age Hayden Christensen. It looks like they didn't have much to work to be done on Ewan McGregor. He pretty much looks within the same age that he did in the Clone Wars. So we begin there, and I did enjoy what that particular scene was trying to set up for the rest of the episode, because there's two parallel storylines happening there, right? We see this fight sequence transpire throughout the rest of the episode, segment by segment, as things are unraveling in real time in the show. And there's this one narrative comparison, right? They're dueling in their minds in that practice battle during the Clone War era. But here in the Kenobi show, they're also trying to outwit each other, as we find out through the rest of the episode, right? It looks like things are pretty clear on the surface. Reva, she's doing the bidding of Darth Vader. Kenobi's trying to rescue all the refugees, and that's all there is to it. Well, as it happens, there's a little bit more layered stuff going on there, but primarily I had issues with how it was executed. So that particular beginning scene is pretty cool. It's all right. I mean, we see a wide shot of a Coruscant. It looked like just a still shot, and we go into the duel itself. Hayden Christensen himself, like, you could tell it's a visual effect to de-age him, and his face looks a little bit fuller and wider, but overall, I really enjoyed it. Like, you couldn't ask for more. Choreography was there. Obviously, they go through the same similar moves. Anakin is favoring his style, and Kenobi is on the defensive as they fight in the Revenge of the Sith. So I saw that interesting parallel there, and choreography. It kind of was suitable to the prequel era, and I suspect that a lot of fans enjoyed it. Now we see Reva, the whole Inquisitor ruse, right? She's standing there on the bridge of the Star Destroyer, and Vader is saying, "Job well done. You're now pursuing Kenobi. All right, here is your mark of distinction. You're now an Inquisitor." So the biggest problem that I have here, as we understand what Vader does in the rest of the episode, that's his game. We get it. He's using her rage and her aggression. But she's an Inquisitor. Forget the Grand Inquisitor. She made it an Inquisitor in the Empire. She has to have some kind of an intelligence or understanding. It's like, oh, hold on a second. Isn't it too quick? What's his game here? What's happening here? Because as we learn later on, Reva's whole mission is to hunt Vader, right? That's her motivation in the show. Like, all right, cool. Even though a lot of us saw it coming that she's not really on board with the Inquisitor program, she's just there to avenge those younglings that she saw being murdered in during the Order 66 in the Jedi Temple. But anyway, just for me, it seemed too quick, and it spells the problems I have with the rest of the show. Nothing is quite earned. It feels like, okay, here's your badge of Inquisitor, Grand Inquisitor. Go and just continue doing your bidding. Job well done. And she never questions it. It happens too quick. And now we're into the refugee bunker, right? We see that the hangar door has been sabotaged because Leia's little cute droid is flying into ventilation. He disrupts some circuitry, and now the door is completely shut, and it's trying to build some tension. Like, hey, what do we do from here? Something is terrible happening here. We need to get the door open in order to get everybody away. At least everyone is on board with understanding that, like, hey, we need to evacuate right now. Whether they understand that they're being directly monitored and pursued or not, they understand that time is short, they gotta leave. I'm like, okay, at least the episode got it there. What I really enjoyed the most about this episode is Leia. So the mechanic Leia, she goes to work. She's like, hey, over here, I need a ladder. And she channels Anakin Skywalker's sensibilities and basically his DNA. He enjoyed tinkering with little droids and knowing how to fix them. And we also see in the beginning of the show that Leia's toy little droid is somehow magically repaired, but we never see who repairs it. Now we get an idea that young Leia is indeed, she's not just little princess running around doing like happy stuff on Alderaan. She knows how to fix things. And I really like that. It's very in line with the character of Anakin Skywalker. And now the Empire arrives to this bunker. And once again, this is where I have a major problem with Deborah Chow's writing and the showrunners, whatever they're doing this. It is so in the nose, and it's so contrived, and it's not very well thought out. It honestly felt like the entire episode was one big cut of video game sequences spliced into one. So the Empire arrives, all the stormtroopers are standing in front of this gate, which is obviously barred, and Reva is standing there barking orders. They're waiting to blast the door. But this is the Empire we're talking about, right? You probably, with your Star Cruiser, you scanned the surface and you understand how this base is set up. Aren't you supposed to cover all exits? Because your idea is, the whole mission is to capture Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's who Vader wants. He doesn't care about these refugees. They're not even rebels. Kenobi is the focal point here. Aren't you supposed to cover all your bases? This is so silly and just, sorry guys, just dumb. They're standing there, all the stormtroopers, and Reva is like, okay. And now Kenobi wants to negotiate with her. He wants to speak to her, like, okay, all right. So Kenobi comes to this gate, and they're hush silence speaking, like, through this giant barred metal gate, which no sound is supposed to come through. And it's like they're hushing to each other. Hey, Reva, by the way, I realize what you're doing. You're not with the Inquisitors. You're hunting Vader. That's what you're doing. And just for a moment there, I thought that he's going to convince Reva, just with one conversation, to make her join his side and see the reasoning behind it, saying, look, you know, you've seen Anakin, he killed all these younglings. Do the right thing here. We have a lot of families and kids here. But fortunately, and I think it was the right decision, that Reva doesn't buy into it. She's too consumed by her anger and rage. She wants Vader. But once again, that communication in the metal door, can't you come up with something more interesting or different, a more tense moment where they actually face each other face to face in the presence of one another, and they're negotiating that way? It felt like it's somebody just threw together a CGI sequence for a video game. It didn't feel like a narrative story happening there with mounting tension. So it almost made me feel that Reva's a little revelation, like, oh, by the way, she's not with the Inquisitors, is the same exact problem that I had with Star Wars prequels. When we went to see Phantom Menace in 1999, nobody had any illusions about who Chancellor Palpatine is. Everyone knew from day one he's going to be the Emperor. And I'm talking about us, the adult fans who obviously saw the original trilogy before. Maybe when you were a kid and it was the first exposure to the Phantom Menace, that was the best ideal way to really experience it and say, oh, who is this little Anakin? What's his story? Or who is this little Chancellor Palpatine? Oh, I didn't even see it coming. You know, he becomes this good person on the surface, becomes this villain at the end. That would have been probably more interesting. But for us, for people familiar with the tropes of Star Wars, we saw it coming a mile away. And it was really not really that interesting, or it wasn't really a revelation to me. I'm like, okay, that's who Reva is. Got it. Let's move on. As the episode is moving on, once again, we're seeing this little mind game, right? Vader is using Reva, but Kenobi is also, in a way, using Reva, or at least tries to appeal to her senses. And that's one aspect of the episode which I thought functions well. I can't say, once again, that was flawlessly executed, but at least it's something that the skeleton of the episode, of the story here, it's working. And Vader is basically playing mind games with Kenobi. He can sense it from the ship and say, that's it. We got Kenobi. He's broken. Hold him down there. I'm going to go. I'm going to take care of it personally. That's what Vader does. I'm like, all right. Then finally, we're going to see that actual real-time combat scene that we've been waiting for of Kenobi versus Vader now. And as he descends, Kenobi also has that little exchange with Reva and says, no, I'm bringing him to you. But as Vader lands and he marches into this bunker, we see that Reva tells him, hey, by the way, I've secured Kenobi. He's inside. Again, it's just this kind of story writing and plot device that really doesn't work for me at all. What is the purpose or reason of hiding Kenobi in the bunker? He's out here in the open. That's where all the stormtroopers are observing you, right? And if Vader's game was really to get Kenobi, aren't you supposed to have other spies or other stormtroopers who are answerable to you directly? And the moment that Reva tries to do something shifty and unnecessary like that, that stormtrooper would be there to question her and say like, hey, hold on a second, why are you bringing him in? This is where the refugees are. We brought him out here and he's secure in the open, in the outside. So, and Vader once again doesn't question it, because as we learn later on, it's a whole betrayal, it's a whole setup of Reva, and they discard her as this unnecessary thing anymore. But once again, Vader's job is to get Kenobi. And once he lands there, he never questions the Reva's decision. He doesn't stop her along the way and have his stormtroopers oversee it and say, okay, all right, Kenobi's here, we got him. The following scene, I suspect, would be perfect, flawless for a lot of folks who enjoyed the recent Vader comic books, and especially for those of you guys who are fans of the Star Wars Force Unleashed, right? Because we now see Vader completely overpowered, fully unleashed. He goes into the hangar, he sees the ship escaping, and he holds it, the entire ship, with one hand. I personally never liked OP Vader. I think it's a matter of preference. I think that particular shot, that scene, was pretty well executed. It's just not my personal preference. I don't like these Jedi who are like godlike powers. Like, okay, you sense the Force, you can levitate your lightsaber, things like that. But this felt just a little bit too much for me. Even though, you know, Anakin is supposed to be the chosen one and all of that jazz. I understand it. I just don't like it. And it felt to me like literally that video game scene where Starkiller tries to like manipulate it. He actually brings down the entire Star Destroyer. As he's doing it, we see the other ship fly out and just escape, and that's what Kenobi was doing. He basically played into Vader's blindness and his rage, just like the way he outwits Anakin in a practice duel on a Coruscant in the past. He does the same with Vader again, and this is where that dynamic of you're still a Padawan, Anakin. You need to learn to control yourself, to control your anger, and that necessity to win all the time. Like you have, your mind has to be calm and focused on the battle. And this is the battle that Vader loses. And then Reva strolls in and Vader dumps the whole truth on her, like, hey, you're nobody, right? And they have this battle, which once again, I did not like one bit. Vader is like dodging everything like a Chinese kung fu movie master who doesn't even need to take out his lightsaber. He blocks her every move. He's toying with her, but then he grabs the lightsaber anyway. Like, aren't you supposed to just dispose of her, kill her, and keep moving? Speaking of sacrifices and killings, let me just rewind a little bit back, right? We have Indira Verma's character die, right? In that shootout, once again, the stormtroopers are strolling into the bunker at point blank range, like literally 2 meters away. They're shooting each other. Not a very creative scene. It's just like pew, 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 pew. They're just shooting at each other. And this character was practically wearing a red shirt for me throughout the entire show. For those of you guys who are not familiar with red shirts, Star Trek, right? The original series. Every time you had a landing party on the planet, and every time you had helping officers rocking red shirts, you know they're dying. They're like fully disposable. Like, yeah, we just need to show that this planet is dangerous. A couple of folks are gonna die. Same as with her. Like, I knew she was gonna go. You had to sacrifice somebody. You had an Imperial garrison storming a refugee bunker. Somebody needs to go. Somebody familiar, a face that we know. And of course, it's gonna be Reva. Even though she's a little bit more developed as a character for me than Reva, she still needs to go. I'm like, all right. I didn't feel bad for her. Honestly, I didn't miss her. I'm like, okay, that's the character they needed sacrifice, because that's what the plot requires to show, hey, by the way, we have stakes here. Which, by the way, it doesn't prove that it has stakes, because after Reva's and Vader's battle, he stabs her literally through the chest. Okay, I can understand it with the Grand Inquisitor, because we can question how much of him is mechanical. Maybe he has been altered. He's a lot more seasoned, wiser than her. He probably has been through a lot more battles. So it stands to reason that maybe some part of his mechanical body was, attacked when Reva stabbed him, and that's how he was able to survive. But Reva, she's there. I'm assuming she's fully human, and he stabs her right through the chest, right nearby where your heart is. For an experienced Jedi Master like Qui-Gon Jinn, it took moments and he was gone. But Reva, she's still crawling around. She's like half dead, but not really dead. Once again, showing me that Kenobi show is not trying to be daring or risky or gritty. It's playing it too safe. It's like, hey, by the way, Reva, maybe fans will respond to this character. Maybe we need to keep her for a little bit more, or maybe we have plans with her. We'll do something different with her. Maybe she'll become like an Inquisitor who turns back to the rogue Jedi, something like that. But anyway, I just felt that it went against the current of this episode's story. Like, it needed to show how evil the Empire is, how intelligent the Empire is, how it knows how to trap you and cover all of the angles of this bunker and really trap Kenobi, make him feel miserable and make the audience worry for him a lot more. And it just didn't happen. Vader takes down this ship, and then we see a second ship fly right out of there. And you could say, oh, by this time, Vader is just too tired to focus his force skills once again, and the ship escapes. It's too easy. And nothing seems earned here. Nothing seems to work well together. The only thread that I liked here that worked for me was the parallel between the practice duel between Kenobi and Anakin and how they try to outwit each other in real time situation, where Kenobi basically played his cards right. He used Vader's aggression against him, and he was able to blind him in that way, and that's how they all escaped. Anyway, we see by the end of it, the Grand Inquisitor lives. He's like, haha, we're gonna leave you here to rot. Like, why just not kill her? If again, just a lot of decisions here which just unravel the entire plot. It unravels the story, and it doesn't feel focused. It doesn't feel like, I don't know, it's just like this one full package, if you guys know what I mean. Anyway, this episode it didn't improve the show for me in any way. I didn't like the action. It felt very silly, very cartoony, very game-like. Stormtroopers shooting at refugees at point blank. No tactical, or storming the compound. No overseeing all the exits. It didn't work for me. Once again, it makes all the Stormtroopers and the Empire completely incompetent and dumb. And I don't understand how Palpatine's Empire lasted for 20 years if they're this level of competence. Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought about this episode. Leave your thoughts in the video section below. Maybe I'm just reading it wrongly. I don't go into each and every episode trying to take notes of what I dislike. That's not how I watch my shows. Even though I had issues with the previous episode, I keep a completely open mind. I'm like, okay, let's see. I almost treat each episode as an entirely new movie or something like that. I was like, okay, even though we know the history, we know what happened before, let's see what this particular episode is telling us, right? There's still a story within the story here. Like, how are you going to work out and develop this Anakin and Kenobi relationship? What are you particularly telling me in this episode? And I gotta say, it's just not very expertly done. It is very mediocre for me, and it's very prequel era kind of like quality of storytelling for me. Anyway, thanks a lot for checking me out, guys. If you enjoyed this review, stay tuned. I will sit down and review my episode 6 when it comes out, and I probably invite a couple of guests, and we'll get to sit down and discuss this full show, share our thoughts. Maybe I'll revise my opinion. Maybe I'll see the full thing all together and say, you know what, maybe I was too harsh here. Maybe this part really deserves a little bit more attention. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll check you out next time. Take care.